In this very first episode of the Playmakers Podcast, I sat down with my friend, Gino Blefari. Now, Gino's been called the most powerful person in residential real estate, and in this interview, he completely opened up. He talked about why he resigned from Berkshire Hathaway HomeServices and HomeServices of America, the role that Warren Buffett has played in shaping Gino's career. We also talked CCP and exclusive listings, and most importantly, we talked about why this is the best time to be selling real estate. It's a unique take. You don't want to miss it. I'm your host, Andrew Flachner, and the Playmakers Podcast begins in 3, 2.
Welcome to the Playmakers Podcast, where we go inside the minds and moves of those shaping the future of real estate. With your host, Andrew Flachner.
Welcome to the Playmakers Podcast, where we sit down with the people who are shaping the future of real estate. I'm your host, Andrew Flachner, and if you enjoy these conversations, please like, subscribe, and share. Today, I am joined by my guest, Gino Blefari. Welcome, Gino.
Hey, good to see you, Andrew.
Good to see you, too. So you recently announced your transition from CEO to Chairman Emeritus of HomeServices of America. Pretty exciting. I know that just a few days after that, Warren Buffett announced his resignation as CEO. So what is that, a coincidence? Is he just following your lead?
Complete coincidence, but you can't believe the number of text messages I got as soon as that happened. There are some parallels between Warren Buffett and myself, which might be kind of interesting for the audience. But
I'd love to hear it.
The Berkshire Hathaway, the little town that it was in the Berkshires. I was born in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, in the Berkshires. Let's see what else. Warren has he's a middle child, the older sister, younger sister. I have an older sister, younger sister. Warren's favorite song is "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." My favorite song is "Somewhere Over the Rainbow." My mom used to sing it to me.
Same.
Warren, this is interesting. When Warren's been in his house his entire adult life, I've been in my house my entire adult life. I was the youngest guy in my neighborhood. Now I'm one of the older people in my neighborhood, but that's kind of
that's pretty
a
rare
coincidence. Yeah. There's a few more. I remember when Warren turned 87, I sent him a football with Dwight Clark, my best pal, right? Dwight Clark, the catch, because he was number 87. And then in a little note, I put a lot of those little nostalgic little coincidences.
Well, listen, you've been in this business for a long time, 4 decades. And one of the things that has always stood out to me is how you have developed leaders. And a lot of leaders talk about developing teams, but you develop people. And that's always made a mark on me. I mean, where does that instinct come from?
You know, I'm Bill Walsh, one of my mentors, the coach of the 49ers, talked about the number one role of a leader is develop leaders. And I've developed leaders my whole career. But if you went back 10 years, just for my time at Berkshire at HomeServices, there's 10 leaders that have top positions that worked under me. I just did that the other day. I mean, you got Sue Yannicone, who was a business consulting for me. You got Jason Wah at Coldwell Banker, who was a CEO for me. You got Michael Gelbert, who runs Forbes International. You got Chris Stewart that runs Place.
Yep.
And there's actually even Mary Lee getting a job at Sotheby's now.
Right.
Okay, is also from my little tree there. Yeah. So that is.
That's got to be fulfilling.
It is, and it's that's kind of like the leader's job, and sometimes too when you I always liken it to the Super Bowl team. Usually the staff kind of gets rated. Right. You know, and that's kind of like what some people get jobs just by being part of that system.
Right.
You know.
Well, I mean, we're recording this in Silicon Valley, and people often talk about the PayPal mafia, right? And that's where these group of founders ended up going on and building up incredible companies. So, all right, 4 decades in the business, you've seen market cycles, you've seen leadership shifts. What are the defining moments in your career?
Okay, yeah, there's a number of them. When I started out as a realtor, and basically a broke realtor. The story is with a $1 bill in my pocket, and that is the truth. And a defining moment I had was by this one agent I sat right behind. At the time, I started at a company called Fox & Carskadden. It was a big company here in the Bay Area. And the fella that I sat behind on purpose so I could just listen to him, Mike Ray, was the best realtor to this day that I've ever met. And he was so knowledgeable with everything he had to say, and I observed him. Well, I would come in at 6:30 a.m., which is unusual for a real estate company, and he'd come in at 7 a.m.
Wow.
Okay. And so many times it was just he and I in there. And I remember struggling and struggling and struggling. And then it clicked. And within about a week, after going 0 for 6 months, after about a week, I had 6 transactions. And I was in there one morning, Monday morning, like 6:30, and I'm numbering my transactions on a desk that's smaller than this little table here, right? The little bullpen thing. And Mike Ray comes in, and he's looking at me and saying, "What are you doing?" I go, "Mike, that's just it. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm numbering my deals." And he goes, "You don't want to ever number your deals." And I go, "Well, why, Mike?" He goes, I've been watching you for like the last 6 months. I've never seen anyone try as hard as you, listen to as many of those bleepity bleep tapes as you listen to, and just be as inquisitive you are." And I says, "Oh, okay." So he goes, "You never want anyone to know you've only got 6 deals going at one time." And so I said, "Mike, how many deals should I have?" And he just looked me straight in the eye and he said, "Easily 15 at one time." That defining moment was Mike Ray believing in me and me believing in him, believing in me. So that was a defining moment because it helped with my confidence. And as a salesperson, you perform how you see yourself. That's why you've heard me, Andrew, say a million times, work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Okay, so that was defining moment number one. My second defining moment was my Little League baseball coach. I kept being the salesperson of the month and the salesperson of the month and the salesperson of the month. So he kept trying to recruit me, and he had a little company called Contempo Realty, and which you may have heard of that one. And I went to work at Contempo Realty as the manager, as a selling manager in the Cupertino office, and I started disrupting everything in the office. Like, we need to fix this. We need a receptionist here. You need to show up to work. You need to show up to the meetings. And the existing agents were all up in arms because who is this crazy young guy who's a manager and just pushing everybody to be better? And they went to lunch with Bob Moles.
I know Bob.
You know Bob, right? Yeah. A great mentor of mine. They went to lunch with Bob Moles to basically get me fired, right? And so Bob came back, and I says, "Bob, how did it go?" He goes, "They had all sorts of complaints about you because you did this and you did that." All good things, Andrew, mind you. You fixed the copier, you got a weekend receptionist, you had an office meeting, people had to show up on time, all of those things. I go, so what did you tell him? And Bob Moles goes, "I told him if Gino has to replace every single one of you, Gino's the manager." So another great mentor, great guy that I respected, showing confidence in me. Right. Again, performing how you see yourself, right? So from 1986 to 1998, I was the #1 agent in Silicon Valley, Santa Clara County, okay? In 1998, we sold, it's 97 actually, we sold Contempo to Realogy, to Anywhere, whatever you want to call them, Syndat, HSF. We sold Contempo there, and then I became the CEO, non-selling CEO, because Coldwell Banker didn't allow that. Realogy didn't allow that. You had to be you'd be the broker of record, but you couldn't sell. I did that job for 5 years, and that was good. Don't really have a defining moment there, except a big exposure to see. I saw it as an independent at Contempo, but now all of a sudden I see all these Coldwell Banker people and just a big, wider platform, and I'm thinking, man, maybe I can start a real estate company. So I resigned that job there, and I love Bob Becker. He was my boss at the time. Great guy. I resigned that job, and I decided to start a company from scratch, which is a really hard thing to do, but all the confidence that comes with ignorance. You just don't know any better, and you just do it.
Right.
So we started Intero Real Estate Services. I'm able to get several of the key people that worked for me at Contempo and Coldwell Banker to join me. And we do something that's never been done before. And we organically, when I say organic, no mergers, no acquisitions, we grow Intero from 0 to 1,000 agents in 18 months with a 26% company dollar. In other words, we're not giving away the store to get these people. Right now, the problem with real estate is you got everybody buying the agents, and the agents have no loyalty, no sense of loyalty to that, and they'll just go where the dough are, or maybe they're such a bad manager of their money, they need the money, right? So they get paid cash up front with a contract that really they pay it back, which they typically never figure out, right? But so let's see. So then I guess the next defining moment was 2013. Ron Peltier, who you know, Ron, another great mentor, great friend of mine. He called me up, said Warren Buffett bought a real estate company, and they're looking for a CEO, and they want to know if I want to do it. This is September 2013. I'm like, no, man, I got this great job at Intero. Our company's doing great. We had 12 consecutive years of organic market share growth. Another thing that's never happened before.
Right.
Okay. So I, but you know, Bob Moles was getting close to retiring. John and Tom, we were so flat. I had those guys were office managers. Okay. Even though they were owners. So we were real flat. They were tired of being office managers and things like that. So we sold. And the defining moment was having Warren Buffett, HomeServices, buy my company, but not only buy my company, let me be the brand that was the first brand to carry his name, Berkshire Hathaway. Right. So that was kind of like a ooh la la, you know, kind of moment.
But I want to pause there. I mean, how did that deal come together with Warren?
It basically, Ron called up in September of 2013 and said, look, I'm going to ask you something. Don't want you to even answer me now. Detro was in the car. We're driving to Brian Crane's office in my car. And he goes, Warren loves real estate. I'm like, Warren? He's like, you know, Warren, oh yeah.
The Warren Buffett?
Right. I'm like, Warren, I'm just a Intero guy. I have no idea, right? Not even paying attention to anything else but growing Intero, right? Warren loves real estate was right out of his quote. And then he bought a network. Okay, bought a real estate franchise network, and we're looking for a leader to grow that network. We want to know if you want to do it. I said, hey, Ron, no, thank you, but no thanks. This is great, but man, I'm here at Intero. I'm an entrepreneur. You know, everything's great. Let me, you know, I'm just going to do this.
You turned down an offer from Warren Buffett.
Yeah, and I said, besides, wouldn't that be kind of awkward? I own an independent real estate company, and I'm the CEO of the brand. And he said, well, if you accept this job, we'll make that transition possible for you and buy Intero. And so then I was like, as goofy as this is, I was like, well, why don't you just buy Intero? We'll make Intero the global brand, you know? And it was no. But in any case, so then.
Was that a moment of marketing genius or hubris? The Intero was going to be the brand and Berkshire Hathaway was not.
Well, I just thought Intero was going to be the brand. You know, my old saying was 2/3 of the earth is covered with water and we'll take the other third. That was in some of my Intero presentations, right?
The tenacity, I love it.
Yeah. So normally when we buy a real estate company, the owner thinks it's worth twice as much as it is. Okay. Well, I didn't realize that Intero was worth as much as it was. I went to Stuart and I asked him about like what would a 5 multiple look on our EBITDA? You know, he gave me a number. I'm like, oh, that's kind of nice, right? And probably hadn't gone through the downturn, Andrew, in 2007 and 8. Probably still wouldn't have sold it because I liked being an entrepreneur.
Right.
But it worked out. It worked out great. We sold Intero, and I became the CEO of the brand. And again, there's been so many defining moments. When you're an agent, you think it's pretty hard being an agent. Then you become a manager. It wasn't so hard being an agent. Then you become the CEO. It was pretty easy being the manager. Then you're an executive at NRT. Wow, it was pretty easy just being the CEO of my own company, right? And then the next thing is you're CEO of a startup. Wow. It was easier when you actually had a brand and a name.
I feel so on that.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You know that, and right along. So now I'm the brand president, and I'm thinking, wow, it's pretty easy being the CEO of an independent company, right? Then I went from being the brand president to the holding company's CEO, and I thought, man, I could do that brand job in my sleep, you know?
Right. Well, and here you are today, right? I
Yeah.
mean, talk to me about this transition because I feel like for a company as large as HomeServices of America, a transition of a CEO is not a simple task. And I know you're big on succession planning, but how did this whole thing come about and why now?
Yeah, we were big on succession planning. One of the things Berkshire has to do is have a succession plan. Every year, you succession plan. And I have just super talented guys, Chris Kelly, Alex Seville, and Chris Kelly. Like probably if you went back to my last 4 succession plans, it was ready now, ready now, ready now. Some people will be ready in 1 to 2 years, 1 to X number of years and things like that, okay?
Right.
So he was certainly ready. And then probably about 9 months ago, I had him take over all the day-to-day stuff that was he and Alex doing the day-to-day stuff. The other thing too was
He being Chris Kelly.
Chris
your
Kelly,
successor.
yeah, my successor. The other thing too being when we had to make all the cuts to just survive during, the lawsuit time and the down market, one of the persons that we got rid of was our communications person, right? And of course, but Chris has that talent to be able to do that. And so there was, I don't think there would be a big surprise. And in many ways, you try to let the other guy already be doing it before you say what you're going to do.
Well, it's nice if you have that liberty.
Yeah.
So how did this decision come to be?
It was just time. I had, great friend of mine, Jim Carter, who I had dinner with last night, had a 60 years old brain tumor. Doctor said you won't see 61. Dwight Clark, my best friend, at 61, ALS. Okay?
Yeah.
Life's short, right? Life is short. No one ever has said, I wished I worked more, even though I love to work.
Right. I mean, coming from you, you're showing up at 6 a.m. in the office and...
Yeah. My daughter... being pregnant, and I'm going to be a grandpa on September 4th, all of that kind of like laid into it. But the other thing, I got to be honest with you, real estate wasn't fun for the last couple of years.
Right.
Okay. And for me, I never did it really for the money. Okay. I was already set. Contempo sold, Intero sold, all my other businesses and things like that.
Right.
So it was probably a little bit different for me. It needed to be fun, and it wasn't quite as fun because if you're not being able to grow and do the things that you can do, but just the market, the lawsuit, all of those things just, was headwinds.
I think that there's a lot of people who can relate to that right now.
I felt Bob Seger, that song, Against the Wind, play that one. I was just running against the wind. Surrounded by strangers I thought were my friends, and I'm running against the wind.
Well, what do you say to people who got into this business with a lot of passion, but they're feeling that wind right now, and they are losing some of that momentum or that excitement?
Well, it's hard. It's hard if it's in a leadership role. Okay, now for a real estate agent, it's great. It's as good as it could be. Prices have never been so high, and when you get this type of a market, 3 things: your work ethic, your mindset, and your skills are the most important things that you have. So if you have a good work ethic, if you have a good mindset, and you have skills, you're dangerous in any market, but even the downward market even more because there's less competition. Where we are today in Silicon Valley, that's fool's paradise.
Is it?
Yeah. You sell 12 houses and you're making a gigantic living.
Yeah, but transaction volume is down.
It's down, but it's not down for the people that do deals. Okay?
Fair enough.
But it is down. It is down considerably. You don't want to be a company. You probably don't want to be a branch manager.
But if you're a top agent or top team,
if you're a top agent, top team, and you know how to execute, I would love this market. One of my mentees, Andy C., 15-person team, makes $24 million. 12 to himself. All right. Andy, you want to be the CEO of HomeServices? No, I can't take the pay cut. Right.
Sure.
So it's great for real estate agents right now. When your average sales price, probably at Intero is, more than $2 million. Okay. Just do the math.
Right. So I have a couple questions on the transition, and then I have a few other topics.
Yeah.
But when you pass the baton to Chris Kelly, I'm just curious, what does he need to bring to the table for this next chapter of HomeServices, right? What is it that HomeServices needs now that it didn't need a few years ago?
Well, we probably always needed it. But Chris Kelly brings a tremendous work ethic. Okay. He's a very smart guy. He was an attorney. Okay, was an attorney at Reese Nichols for us. Then he was an attorney for HomeServices. Then he was the CEO at Ebby Holiday. So he brings a great bit of knowledge in there and also a great work ethic. You just need to have that. There's no shortcut to working,
Right.
you know?
And why is work ethic so important?
Because you're the leader by example.
Okay.
You know, the speed of the leader is going to determine the rate of the pack, right? I mean, these are all hitting you with slogans and things like that, but they're slogans or they're little sayings because they're true.
Right.
Okay. And so look at HomeServices couldn't be in better hands with Chris Kelly and Alex Seville. It's a good 1-2 combination.
Right. So we talked a lot about your career trajectory and the story. You know, every great leader has been tested. I'm curious if you can share a story when you faced a really big challenge and what you learned from it.
Yeah. It would be 2007. We had, when I started in Taro, I had an outside investor, capital investor. But then in 2007, the market started changing. Okay. And I would go to a meeting every month with my CFO in Denver. That's where the headquarters was for the guy with the capital, the guy that brought the capital, Jerry Hotman. Great man. Any case, there's 18 companies, then there's 16 companies, then there's 14 companies, then there's 10 companies. And I'm thinking, wow, they're all real estate related and everybody was going out of business, right? I thought, oh my gosh, he's going to go bankrupt and I'm going to just get flushed right down the drain. We had been doing great. We end up losing. We buy the investor out. Okay, the only way we could buy the investor out was pay him back the original investment. Okay, which was like $28 million. The company's probably worth 16. So we buy basically half of the company back for $28 million. We give them all the cash we have. Then we go to Bridge Bank right down here in San Jose. We get a $13 million loan. Okay, they've taken TARP money. We close on April 7th, and the market just tanks, and we lose $3.5 million. Well, we had about $8 million in the bank, but it was like, whoa, and we just didn't, we didn't react fast enough. The next year in 2008, we lost $4.5 million. Now we're like broke. We're broke, and we're out of covenants with our bank, and every week I'm going into Bridge Bank, and I'm sitting there, and they're like basically yelling at you. Because you're out of compliance. And I call my mom and dad into my house, into my office, and I refinance my parents' house that they own free and clear in Sunnyvale for $400,000 and put that into Intero to make payroll in January 2009. Now, I had already right-sized the company. I just did it too long. I had cut that $8 million out of an annual budget. I had always had an accountable culture, but it just became super duper accountable. And we have this thing called Moneyball, which I would measure the closed company dollar from every agent we recruit against the closed company dollar from every agent that would leave. So you'd know if you're growing or shrinking.
Smart.
2009, our closed company dollar from recruiting was $1,732,000. Okay. All of that went flat bottom line profit because we had already got it a break even thing. And then once you have that system, it doubles and it doubles and it doubles and it doubles. And in a real estate company, I mean, every single person knew each office. I need X number of deals to break even. I need X number of deals to make a profit. Everybody knew what they were doing. It was like a super duper business, right? But that defining moment when everything you've done, and I had been pretty successful up to that time, equity lines on my apartment building, equity lines on my houses, equity line on my own personal residence.
Wow.
I mean, just as
you were all in.
All in. And so were the other three. All in.
But you had the quantitative rigor that I think a lot of real estate agents and teams struggle with. I mean, what would be your advice to a team or an agent that is kind of winging it, or I shouldn't say winging it, but they certainly aren't, there's no money ball there.
Yeah, well, my thing to teams, and that's potentially something I could do is coach with Tom or Mike or Brian on teams. But what you don't know, here's what I tell a team: what you don't know will hurt you.
Right.
Okay. And most of them don't know. Right. They're the rainmaker, which is great, perhaps, which is really, really good.
Yeah.
But they need to have a system, like my system was always focus, leverage, engagement, and accountability. Those 4 things.
All right, I want to save some time for some industry trends.
Yeah.
You've had a front row seat to a lot of change in the industry. I mean, heck, you've shaped some of that change. And so I wanted to ask you some questions, zoom out a bit and get your perspective on the state of the industry. And that is my first question before getting into specifics. Just how would you describe the state of the industry right now?
It's changing, constantly changing, constantly changing. And when you have companies that only need to grow top side revenue, okay, maybe not pre-tax profit or even EBITDA and things like that, it kind of becomes challenging because, they can just buy agents.
Yeah, they're playing by different rules.
Yeah, playing by different rules. So I would say that. I would say also, too, the agents have got control now. They get so much. The company, if you look at the company dollar for companies, it has just gone down every single year. Right? And that's a huge thing. So it's harder on the companies. And then you got these companies, they're a web-based company and they don't have any bricks and mortar. So, okay, you got to compete with that. Your HomeServices and your rent might be $186 million a year, right? Okay, with all your offices, right? And you got to compete with that. So you got to constantly be doing. It's the corporate balancing act, doing more with less.
Right.
Managers now are managers of 1, 2, 3 offices. Before that was impossible.
One of the things that you're describing seems to be innovator's dilemma, where you have these major shifts in how brokerage is being run. You have cloud-based brokerages, no more bricks and mortar. You have the emergence of teams as a big value creation unit of real estate. Are brokerage leaders doing enough to disrupt themselves and to make change in their business model? I think about this a lot. I mean, just this morning, Skype announced that they are shutting down after 23 years in business. And Skype dominated with video calls to consumers. Mm-hmm. But they never shifted to businesses, which is what Zoom did.
Zoom did, yeah. And then COVID helped.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. But they rode the wave, right? But they were prepared to. And the question I have is, what would you say to a brokerage leader that's deciding whether to stay the course or to disrupt themselves and make bigger change?
Well, I would say just get as lean as you possibly can. And you've got to offer value. You got to, and they got to convince the agents that there's value in what you're doing. If you can't, they're just going to go to the next guy that pays them more.
Sure, but I think for many years, brokerages have catered to agents, and I'm curious what you think about teams as a bigger focal point for brokerages, because I think a lot of brokerages feel threatened by teams, conflicts with their margins and their economics.
Yeah, Andrew, and you're right. With the problem, here's why some brokers don't like teams, is because you get all these team members, okay, and the margin of all these team members goes to the team leader and not to the company.
Right.
Okay. And that's that's shame on the company that couldn't give the same value, they had to go to the team,
Right. But I think, I think launching a team can be scary too. If a brokerage provides more infrastructure or more economics or more incentives to a team leader, maybe there's a way for the economics to work for both.
Yeah, maybe there is. I remember, when teams first came out, had this little policy. Yes, you can have as many people as you want on your team. Okay, you can't hire anyone from inside the company, the company, and if you do, their company dollar is going to stay with the company for 3 years, so you can have a 3-year runway. And by the way, you can't have any more space.
Right.
That was one way to handle teams, but then they just go across the street to the guy that's going to give them all the space and doesn't really care or whatever, So it's it's not my issue to deal with anymore,
All right. Another probably uncomfortable topic to bring up is just exclusive listings, right? You have some companies out there, we know who they are, that are really pushing exclusives, calling it seller choice. You have other companies that believe more access, more visibility to listings is better for the ecosystem. Where do you fall on this issue?
Here's where I fall on the issue. I always felt that my duty as the listing agent was a fiduciary duty to the seller. Okay. Now, if the seller wants me to sell their home for the highest net price, okay, I know from Economics 1A that price is an interaction of supply and demand. All right. So if I show all the buyers their house, technically they would have a higher price, right? Now, so that's if your view is you're got that fiduciary duty to your seller, okay? Certainly, for a big company, it's going to benefit you. It's a big company and you control the inventory. It benefits you. But my philosophy is you got to just disclose it to the seller and make sure they understand it, and let them make the choice.
Right. Okay. Informed consent.
Informed consent, but really informed consent. Probably not just one little,
paragraph 2, section 3.
Yeah, and you're just signing right away and signing right away. I'd want to be crystal clear, because when I sold houses, I used the exclusivity, the companies that were doing the exclusivity, against them.
How so?
Okay. I just explained to the seller, here's the agency disclosure. California Civil Code 1102 requires me to disclose to you what agency is. And I disclosed them what a buyer's agent is, a seller's agent is, and dual agent is. And I took them on my fiduciary duty. So I would do better when you do better, almost, right?
Right.
And then I explained to them exactly how Economics 1A works, with price being an interaction of supply and demand, right? So I got to bring the market for the market to bring the price, right? It's if I got 2 offers, I'm going to get more, right? If I got 4 offers, I'm going to get more. If I get this, so basically, I would just say, here's the deal. If they want to try to sell it themselves, that's only one agent bringing a buyer there. Okay, do you think that's going to get you the highest price, right?
Right.
And if they're willing to do that, would they be breaching their fiduciary duty to you? It just was a conversation like that. And if they understood it, it becomes simple.
So that's the conversation between the agent and the client.
Yeah.
How do you address the concerns of a brokerage that's competing with another brokerage that's keeping inventory off market, right? It's becoming a really tense battlefield out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I'd like to say, I'm not worried about it anymore, right? Not worried about it anymore. Let them battle it out. But it's all you've just got to be able to convince the people. It's like if they're holding it off a company exclusive. I've heard like Zillow, you can't go on Zillow, right? Have you heard that? Right. So I might say, look, you do realize your property's delisted? Delisted? Yeah, it's delisted. It's not on Zillow. Right. Because of this. So you're not showing it to everybody there. They understand supply and demand. So it's just gonna be a battle, and you're just gonna have to figure it out.
Yep. Fair enough. What advice would you give to the next generation of real estate leaders? What should they prioritize? What should they be ignoring?
Don't give up your sales team. Usually all of them start out as a realtor, many of them. You're gonna make the most money selling houses. Okay? If you want to be a leader, that's great. Okay, I was a leader from 88 to 90, from 86 to 98, but I was still selling a lot of houses, right? And I would just tell them, look, if you can sell houses and have a team and get your name out there, that's almost that's your security, right?
Right. As we wrap up and we talk about HomeServices, I'm curious what you believe HomeServices' edge is, over the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, I think HomeServices' edge is something that we really have been good at, and we can continue to get better. But remember, we're in the mortgage, the title, the insurance, the franchise business. We're in a whole bundle of services, and those are the businesses with the higher margins in them.
So now that you've made this transition into Chairman Emeritus, what do you plan to do with your personal time?
I will spend a lot more time at Intero, because it's close by. I'll do a little bit of speaking if someone wants me to come speak there. Right now, I'm a consultant for HomeServices, which includes the brand. So, for example, next week I'll be in Denver as part of the brand and part of HomeServices, just giving a talk there. So that's it. And just looking at all the other potential opportunities, that are out there where I can help someone.
Yeah, as somebody who shows up to work at 6 a.m., I don't think you're going to be on the beach sipping margaritas.
Well, I'll be doing that though. So I'll be doing that some too. My focus is going to be on my family. My focus is going to be on my health. I used to I always have worked out, right? Always have had that routine. But now it's like, okay, I'm in the gym early, probably 5 a.m. But it's not like, boy, I got a 6 a.m. East Coast call that I got to get on, right? And so I can maybe spend 2 hours in the gym. I can just do different things more for myself.
Yeah, I've been lobbying for more hours in a day, and I think you just found them.
Yeah.
You've achieved a lot more than most can dream of. And I want to know, what is the biggest driver of success for you?
For me, it's funny because the biggest driver for success for me, I would say my ability to follow my schedule. Okay, because that's huge. But really, it starts out with a routine, and I would say it's a morning routine, and now I've even moved it to an evening routine. But when you wake up in the morning, most realtors, most people, you're like, okay, what does the day have to offer, right? And you want to be fearless when you do that. So I have a routine that I do every single day, and I've done it for 40 years. It'll change a tiny bit, but it's really very, very similar. And I want to get my head in the right mental state, okay? And how I do that is there's a poem, If by Rudyard Kipling, and I'll listen to it on my phone or I'll read it. And if you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you, if you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, make allowance for their doubting too, you can find the Kipling poem. It's really good. Then there's a thing by Dino from his book Mission Success, and it's got another good affirmations in there. I will live today as all good actors do when they are on stage, only in the moment. I cannot perform at my best by regretting my previous acts, mistakes, or worrying about the scenes to come. I'll do the Kipling poem, I'll do Dino, and then I'll do this one little self-confidence formula from the Think and Grow Rich book. That takes me 8 minutes and 12 seconds. I know it because I see it on my phone when I do that. Then I'll go through my life plan with a personal vision. Well, first a mission, a theme. The theme this year, becoming a grandpa. Okay, and remember, I did this back in October. Lauren wasn't even pregnant yet. Okay, but I knew that it was getting close to that time. Becoming a grandpa. And then mission, I help people achieve their goals faster than they would in my absence. Then I got a personal vision and an ideal personal vision. Then a physical vision. Then an employee vision and a company vision. We could do a whole
workshop
or talk on that little piece there, but it's got affirmations in it. That takes exactly 15 minutes. But by the time I've done that, my state has changed. Okay, and I'm more fearless at that point because I put great stuff into my head. Now I understand the secret of changing the attitudes of others, and that's to change my own. Just good thing after good thing. I form win-win relations based on truth. I realize if it's win-lose, eventually both parties lose. Just all sorts of good stuff that I'm programming into my head in the morning. Right. Then I'm gonna, of course, get the workout in, and then my meds, meditation, exercise, diet, sleep, keystone habits that create small wins, all part of a routine. So I think my ability to stay on my routine, the discipline to stay on that routine has been my biggest deal.
So you're speaking really fast there.
Yeah.
I want to slow down on the meds thing because
Yeah.
I know that a lot of leaders out there could benefit from this acronym meds. Tell me more about that.
Okay, meds acronym for meditation, exercise, diet, and sleep. Okay, I call those keystone habits that create small wins. Now, what is a small win? Well, small win, Andrew, is exactly what it sounds like. Okay, and once a small win is accomplished, forces are set in motion that favor another small win and another small win. You did it, your career's done it, and here you are doing an interview. Right? It's all that progress of that small win after that small win after that small win, and eventually it makes people realize that bigger things are within reach, right? So the meditation piece, exercise, super important. If you look at the benefits of meditation and the benefits of exercise and the benefits of sleep, it's like almost the same, right? Healthier, you're this, you're that, you're everything else. So meditation is the first one. Exercise is the second one. Work out every single day, right?
Mm-hmm.
Work out every single day. A diet, okay? Right now, that's another thing I started to do because I can do it a little bit easier now that I'm kind of in quasi-retirement. I'm going on that, protein and vegetables. nothing white, to try to lower that sugar down, okay? So meditation, exercise, diet, and then sleep, and the importance of sleep. So I'll go to bed super duper early. I get up early. I get up before 5 every day, but I'll go to bed super early.
What's early?
Okay, 8 o'clock I'll be in bed listening to a book.
Gotcha.
And fall asleep listening to a book. I will say, the pain of discipline weighs ounces. The pain of regret weighs tons.
Wow.
Right? You don't want to have that regret that you didn't, like what is being successful, right? It's the self-satisfaction of knowing that Andrew gave his very best, whether you won or you lost.
100%.
Right? That's kind of like what it is.
I think that for any of my listeners who lead a 5-person team or a 5,000-person organization, there's lots that they learn from you and your background and your journey. Well, thank you so much, Gino. Really,
Andrew,
really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
To everyone watching on YouTube or listening in on the podcast, if you got something out of today's conversation, please write a review, please subscribe, even take a screenshot of this episode, post it on social, tag me so I know that you're tuning in and can make more content like this. This is the Playmakers Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Flachner, and we'll see you next time.